They told you to be kind, to be honest, loyal, patient, forgiving. And what did it give you? Disrespect, silence, betrayal. The world applauds weak men in public, then destroys them in private. Because power does not belong to the innocent. It belongs to the man who understands human nature. The man who stops begging for approval. The man who kills his need to be liked. The man willing to become the villain in everyone else's story. That is the truth society hides from you. And deep down, you already know it. You felt it the moment people only respected you after you became colder. After you stopped explaining yourself. After you stopped caring who stayed and who left. Because humans are strange creatures. They say they love honesty, but they worship power. They say they want kindness, but follow dominance. Even Niccolò Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago. He watched kings smile while poisoning their enemies. He watched loyal men get executed. He watched fear control nations more effectively than love ever could. And from the shadows of Renaissance Italy, he discovered something terrifying. The man who refuses to become dangerous will always become a victim. This is not a lesson about evil. This is a lesson about survival. Because the moment you understand human nature, your entire life changes. You stop chasing validation. You stop fearing rejection. You stop allowing emotional parasites to control your mind. And for the first time, you become free. But freedom has a price. You must destroy the version of yourself that desperately wanted everyone to like you. Tonight, we begin that transformation. Not into a monster, into a man the world can no longer manipulate. Lesson 1. Respect is never given to the good man. The greatest lie ever told to men is that goodness creates respect. It does not. Goodness creates comfort, and comfort makes people forget your value. Think about your own life. The more available you became, the more invisible you felt. The more understanding you were, the more people tested your limits. The more loyal you remained, the easier they betrayed you. Because human beings rarely respect what they can easily control. That is the brutal truth Niccolò Machiavelli understood long before modern psychology existed. People admire kindness from a distance, but up close, they exploit it. A man who cannot say no becomes a servant to everyone around him. And the world has no respect for servants pretending to be kings. Look carefully at human behavior. The man who fears confrontation gets ignored. The man who constantly explains himself loses authority. The man desperate to prove he is good quietly becomes weak in the eyes of others. Not because people are evil. Because human nature respects emotional strength more than moral purity. This is why the quiet man in the room often controls it. He does not overshare. He does not seek approval. He does not rush to defend himself. His silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates power. Most men destroy themselves because they crave acceptance more than respect. But acceptance is temporary. Respect changes how people behave around you. Respect changes tone of voice, eye contact, boundaries, energy. Respect makes people think carefully before crossing you. And here is the dangerous part. Many people will never respect you until they fear losing access to you. That realization changes everything. Because weak men negotiate their value. Powerful men remove their presence. The moment you stop chasing people, you begin controlling the interaction. Suddenly they notice your silence, your absence, your emotional distance. Humans are addicted to certainty. So when certainty disappears, attention appears. This is why emotionally detached men often appear powerful. Not because they feel nothing, because they control what others can access. Modern society tells men to constantly express themselves. But Machiavelli understood something darker. Mystery creates authority. When people cannot fully read you, They become cautious around you. And caution is the beginning of respect. Look at history. Kings were not respected because they were emotionally available. They were respected because they were unpredictable. A ruler who forgives every betrayal invites rebellion. A ruler who punishes once creates obedience for years. This does not mean becoming cruel for no reason. It means understanding consequences. If people can hurt you without consequences, they eventually will. Human beings naturally test boundaries. Friends test them. Family tests them. Co-workers test them. Even lovers test them. And every time you tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict, you silently train people to value you less. That is why many good men live miserable lives. They confuse self-sacrifice with virtue. But endless self-sacrifice without boundaries creates resentment, not love. Sooner or later, the mask cracks. The nice guy becomes bitter, angry, exhausted, because deep down he realizes something painful. Nobody respected the man who abandoned himself to please others. This is why becoming the villain often begins with one simple word: no. No to manipulation. No to disrespect. No to emotional games. No to people who only call when they need something. And the moment you begin saying no, watch how quickly people reveal their true nature. Some will call you selfish. Others will say you changed. But what they really mean is this: you stopped being easy to control. That is when your transformation truly begins. A dangerous man is not dangerous because he hurts everyone. He is dangerous because he no longer tolerates disrespect simply to keep peace. Peace without respect is psychological slavery. Never forget that. Niccolò Machiavelli once warned that a ruler who tries to be loved by everyone eventually loses authority. Why? Because leadership requires distance. If everyone feels emotionally entitled to you, they eventually stop valuing you. This applies everywhere. Relationships, friendships, business, power. The man who is always available becomes emotionally common, and humans rarely worship what feels common. Scarcity creates value, even emotionally. That is why powerful men master absence. They disappear from places where they are disrespected. They do not beg to be understood. They let silence expose people. And silence is terrifying. Because silence forces others to confront their own behavior. Most people talk too much because they fear losing control of the conversation. But calm silence? That unsettles people. It creates tension. And tension creates psychological dominance. This is why the strongest men often speak the least. Every word feels intentional. Every reaction feels controlled. Meanwhile, weak men leak emotions constantly. Anger, validation, jealousy, insecurity. And every emotional outburst gives others information they can use against them. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. He knew emotional control was power. A man ruled by emotions can always be manipulated. Insult him, he reacts. Ignore him, he panics. Challenge him, he loses composure. But a man who controls his emotions becomes unreadable. And unreadable men are dangerous. That is why becoming the villain is not about becoming evil. It is about becoming emotionally disciplined enough to stop allowing society to weaponize your kindness against you. Because many people do not want your goodness. They want your obedience. There is a difference. True power begins the moment you realize you do not need to explain your boundaries. You simply enforce them. Quietly. Calmly. Without guilt. And yes, some people will hate you for it. Good. Respect and hatred often arrive together. Weak men fear being disliked. Powerful men understand it is unavoidable. If you stand for nothing, everyone temporarily approves of you. The moment you develop standards, enemies appear. That is the price of authority. History proves this endlessly. Every feared leader was criticized. Every powerful man was misunderstood. Every dangerous thinker was called arrogant, cold, or ruthless. Even Niccolò Machiavelli himself became infamous simply for exposing truths most people were too afraid to admit. Humans claim to hate manipulation, yet society itself is built on manipulation. Advertising manipulates desire. Politics manipulates fear. Social media manipulates attention. And people manipulate each other emotionally every single day. The difference is this: most manipulation is hidden beneath fake politeness. That is why emotionally intelligent men stop taking words seriously. They watch actions. Because actions expose hierarchy. Who interrupts you? Who ignores your boundaries? Who only appears when convenient? These small behaviors reveal how people truly see you. And once you understand this, your eyes open forever. You stop being emotionally naive. You stop confusing attention with loyalty, words with respect, affection with sincerity. Because humans often love strategically, they move toward strength, status, security, advantage. This sounds cold, but accepting reality is what creates freedom. Men suffer because they expect human nature to be morally pure. It never was. Machiavelli knew this centuries ago. That is why he studied power instead of fantasy. And once you do the same, your life changes forever. You stop expecting fairness. You start mastering leverage. You stop chasing love blindly. You start observing intention. You stop trying to save everyone. You finally save yourself. And strangely, that is the exact moment people begin respecting you more. Because self-respect changes your entire energy. Your posture changes. Your voice changes. Your eyes change. You no longer seek permission to exist. And people feel that immediately. The world senses weakness faster than words can describe. But it also senses discipline, calmness, control. A man who can walk away from anything becomes impossible to manipulate. That is real freedom. Not money, not fame. Emotional independence, the ability to lose people without losing yourself. Most men never achieve this. They become addicted to approval, and anyone addicted can always be controlled. That is why society fears emotionally independent men, because they cannot be guilted easily, shamed easily, manipulated easily. They become unpredictable, and unpredictability creates power. This is the first transformation. The death of the approval-seeking man, the birth of the emotionally disciplined one. The world may call him cold. Let them. Winter is always colder than spring. But winter survives. But understanding respect is only the beginning. Because the moment you stop needing approval, something darker happens. You begin seeing people clearly, their masks, their hidden motives, their silent jealousy. And in the next lesson, you will discover why loneliness is not a curse for powerful men. It is their weapon. Lesson 2. Loneliness is the price of power. The moment you begin changing, you lose people. Not because you became evil, because you became harder to control. Most relationships are built on silent agreements. Stay the same, stay predictable, stay emotionally available, stay weak enough to need me. And the moment you break that agreement, people become uncomfortable. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this deeply. A powerful man inevitably walks alone. Because truth isolates. Discipline isolates. Self-control isolates. Most people bond through distraction. Complaining. Gossip. Validation. But the man obsessed with power begins withdrawing from noise. He starts observing more than speaking. And suddenly, he notices everything. Fake smiles, hidden envy, forced loyalty. He realizes many people never loved him. They loved access to him. That realization changes a man forever. Because once you see human nature clearly, innocence dies. This is why powerful men often appear emotionally distant, not because they hate people, because experience taught them caution. Every betrayal teaches silence. Every humiliation teaches restraint. Every disappointment kills another illusion. And slowly, the naive man disappears. Society will tell you loneliness is unhealthy. But sometimes, loneliness is the place where weak identities go to die. When nobody is clapping for you, supporting you, checking on you, you discover who you truly are. Most men avoid silence because silence forces self-confrontation. No distractions, no validation, no escape, only your thoughts, your fears, your truth. That is why isolation becomes a weapon. Because a man comfortable alone becomes difficult to manipulate. He no longer tolerates fake relationships just to avoid emptiness. He no longer begs for attention. And desperation disappears from his energy. People feel that instantly. There is something terrifying about a man who does not fear being alone, because loneliness no longer controls him. And once loneliness loses power over you, people lose power over you too. Niccolò Machiavelli once observed that men are quick to betray when loyalty no longer benefits them. That truth sounds cold, but it creates emotional intelligence. You stop expecting unconditional loyalty from unstable people. You stop trusting words blindly. You start studying behavior, patterns, energy, and slowly, your circle becomes smaller, but stronger, because powerful men do not collect crowds. They collect clarity. Weak men need constant noise to feel important. Strong men build themselves in silence. While others chase attention, they sharpen discipline. While others seek approval, they master emotional control. This is why solitude terrifies average people, because silence exposes weakness. But to the disciplined man, silence becomes training, and in that silence, something dangerous is born. Patience, the ability to observe without reacting, the ability to remain calm while others lose control. That is real power, not loudness. Control. A lion does not roar constantly. It watches, and when the moment comes, it acts once. That is why becoming the villain often means disappearing for a while. Not to escape the world, to rebuild yourself away from its manipulation. Away from weak opinions, away from emotional parasites, away from people who secretly benefit from your insecurity. And when you finally return, you return different. Quieter, sharper, harder to break. The world will say you changed. Smile quietly. Because they are right. But isolation alone does not create power. Because even strong men destroy themselves when emotions control their mind. And in the next lesson, you will discover the most dangerous skill Niccolò Machiavelli believed a man could possess: the ability to remain completely calm, while everyone else loses control. Lesson 3. Emotional men are easy to control. The fastest way to destroy a man is not through violence, it is through his emotions. Make him angry, and he becomes blind. Make him desperate, and he becomes weak. Make him emotional, and he exposes himself. This is why Niccolò Machiavelli believed emotional control was one of the highest forms of power. Because whoever controls your emotions controls you. Look at the world carefully. People are manipulated every day through fear, through outrage, through validation, through attention. Most men think power is dominance over others. No, real power is dominance over yourself. The ability to remain calm when disrespected, calm when ignored, calm when betrayed. Because emotional reactions reveal weakness. The angry man becomes predictable, and predictable men are easy to defeat. That is why dangerous men stay composed. Cold eyes, slow speech, controlled reactions, not because they feel nothing. Because they understand something most people never learn. Emotions are information, not commands. Weak men obey every feeling immediately. They text back instantly, react instantly, argue instantly. And in doing so, they surrender control. But the disciplined man pauses. He watches. He studies people before responding. That silence creates psychological pressure because calmness unsettles emotional people, especially manipulators. A manipulative person survives through your reactions. They want anger, explanation, drama. The moment you stop reacting emotionally, their power disappears. This is why silence is feared. Silence forces people to face uncertainty, and uncertainty creates tension. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. A ruler who cannot control himself cannot control anything else. That truth still rules the modern world. The man who masters his emotions becomes unreadable, and unreadable men are dangerous, because nobody knows how to manipulate them. Remember this carefully. Anyone can appear strong when life is easy, but true power reveals itself during disrespect, pressure, betrayal, and chaos. Can you remain calm there? Can you control your face, your voice, your energy? Because that is where masculine power is born, not in comfort, in restraint. A sword kept in its sheath is more terrifying than one waved wildly in the air. That is why powerful men speak less. Every word becomes intentional, every movement calculated. Meanwhile, emotional men leak their weaknesses constantly. Jealousy, insecurity, neediness, and the world notices. People may pity emotional weakness, but they rarely respect it. Control creates respect. This does not mean becoming emotionless. It means becoming disciplined enough to choose your response instead of becoming a slave to impulse. That is the transformation. The moment emotion stops ruling your mind, you stop becoming easy to manipulate. And for the first time, you begin moving through the world with real power. Quiet power. Dangerous power. The kind people feel without you saying a word. But emotional control alone is not enough. Because the world is filled with smiling enemies, people who secretly envy your growth while pretending to support you. And in the next lesson, you will learn why Niccolò Machiavelli warned men never to trust appearances. Because the most dangerous attacks often come disguised as friendship. Lesson 4. The most dangerous people smile at you. Not every enemy attacks openly. The most dangerous ones clap for you in public, while secretly hoping you fail in silence. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this better than most men ever will. Because power attracts jealousy naturally. The moment you begin improving yourself, people change. Some become inspired, others become threatened. And threatened people rarely attack directly. They manipulate quietly. Through doubt, through subtle disrespect, through fake concern. Are you sure that's a good idea? You've changed. You're taking life too seriously. Listen carefully. Many people will try to keep you small because your growth reminds them of their weakness. That is human nature. Most men expect betrayal from enemies, but betrayal rarely comes from enemies. It comes from people you trusted emotionally. Friends, partners, co-workers, sometimes even family. That is why powerful men observe energy more than words. Because words are cheap. Anyone can pretend loyalty, but behavior always exposes truth. Who disappears when you succeed? Who becomes cold when you gain confidence? Who secretly enjoys your failures? Watch carefully. Jealousy hides behind smiles. And weak men ignore the signs because they fear loneliness. But strong men accept a painful truth. Not everyone deserves access to your mind. Niccolò Machiavelli warned rulers never to trust appearances completely. Because humans perform constantly. They wear masks to gain advantage. Some people praise you only to study you. Some support you only while you are beneath them. And the moment you rise higher, their mask slips. This is why silence becomes a weapon again. The less people know about your plans, your emotions, your weaknesses, the harder you become to sabotage. Weak men reveal everything. Their goals, their pain, their next move. Then they wonder why people use that information against them. Privacy is power. Mystery is protection. A disciplined man speaks carefully because he understands something dangerous. Not everyone clapping for you wants you to win. That truth sounds paranoid to innocent minds, but experience teaches it brutally. The world is filled with hidden competition. People compare constantly. Money, status, attention, influence, and many friendships quietly become battles of ego. That is why powerful men choose their circle carefully, not based on history, based on loyalty. Because loyalty becomes rare when power enters the room. And once you truly understand human nature, you stop expecting honesty from everyone. You expect strategy. That awareness does not make you cruel. It makes you prepared, like a king entering a room, knowing every smile could hide a knife. Calm, aware, controlled. That is the mindset of dangerous men. Not blind trust, careful observation. And once you master that skill, very few people will ever deceive you again. But there is one final weakness that destroys more men than betrayal ever could. The inability to let go. Because in the next lesson, you will discover why Niccolò Machiavelli believed attachment itself can become a prison, and why powerful men are willing to lose everything to remain free. Lesson 5. Attachment is the root of weakness. The easiest way to control a man is to discover what he cannot let go of. His need for love, his fear of rejection, his obsession with being understood. Once someone controls your emotions, they control your decisions. That is why Niccolò Machiavelli respected men who mastered detachment. Because attachment creates fear, and fear destroys power. A man terrified of losing people becomes easy to manipulate. He tolerates disrespect, betrayal, humiliation, not because he is weak physically, because he is emotionally dependent. And emotional dependency is invisible slavery. Look around carefully. Most people stay in situations that destroy them simply because they fear loneliness. Bad relationships, fake friendships, toxic environments. Why? Because attachment whispers dangerous lies. What if nobody else comes? What if I end up alone? What if losing them destroys me? So people remain trapped, not by chains, by fear. But powerful men understand something differently. Anything you cannot walk away from owns you. Read that again, because that sentence changes lives. The moment you become willing to lose everything, you become dangerous, not reckless, free. Free from manipulation, free from emotional blackmail, free from begging for validation. That is real power. Niccolò Machiavelli knew rulers who became emotionally attached to comfort, eventually lost kingdoms. Because attachment weakens judgment. A desperate man makes emotional decisions, and emotional decisions often destroy long-term power. This is why disciplined men practice emotional control constantly. They love without losing themselves. They care without becoming dependent. They stay calm even when people leave, because they understand a painful truth. Most things in life are temporary. People change. Feelings fade. Loyalty shifts. And if your identity depends entirely on others, your peace disappears the moment they do. That is why strong men build themselves internally, through discipline, purpose, self-respect, not external approval. The world fears detached men because detached men cannot be controlled through guilt or emotion easily. They remain calm under pressure. They do not chase. They do not beg. And that energy creates silent authority. People feel it instantly. There is something intimidating about a man who is emotionally stable alone, because he chooses relationships from strength, not desperation. That is the transformation most men never achieve. The ability to care deeply, without surrendering control of themselves. And once you master detachment, you stop fearing loss, which means nobody can psychologically imprison you again. But there is one final truth darker than all the others, the truth about becoming the villain completely. Because in the final lesson, you will discover why Niccolò Machiavelli believed every powerful man eventually faces a terrifying choice: remain morally innocent or become strong enough to survive the real world. Lesson 6. The world calls you a villain the moment you stop being useful in the end. Becoming the villain has nothing to do with evil. It begins the moment you stop sacrificing yourself for people who would never do the same for you. The moment you stop tolerating disrespect, you become cold. The moment you stop chasing approval, you become arrogant. The moment you finally protect your peace, you become selfish. Why? Because weak people are comfortable only when you remain controllable. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this brutal truth centuries ago. Society praises obedient men publicly, but secretly rewards dangerous ones. History never remembers the harmless. It remembers the powerful, the disciplined, the feared, the men who refuse to bend under pressure. That is why every transformation feels lonely at first. Because the old version of you must die. The naive version, the approval-seeking version, the emotionally dependent version. And death is never comfortable. There comes a moment in every man's life where he sees the world clearly. He realizes loyalty is conditional for many people. Respect must be enforced. And freedom requires emotional detachment. That realization changes his eyes forever. Suddenly, he speaks less, observes more, trusts carefully, moves differently. Not because he hates humanity, because he finally understands it. This is the final lesson Niccolò Machiavelli tried to teach. A man who refuses to become strong because he fears being misunderstood will spend his entire life controlled by weaker people. That is the tragedy of modern men. They fear judgment more than weakness. So they remain soft, predictable, emotionally exposed, and the world consumes them slowly. But the man who accepts solitude, masters his emotions, studies human nature, and becomes willing to walk alone, becomes impossible to dominate. That is true freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want. The freedom to remain yourself in a world constantly trying to manipulate you. And yes, some people will call you dangerous after this transformation. Let them. A sword is dangerous too, but only in the hands of a disciplined man. Never forget this. The lion is always called cruel by the sheep. Not because the lion is evil, because the lion reminds them what power looks like. So if the world begins calling you the villain, maybe it simply means you finally stopped being their victim. And perhaps that is the moment your real life finally begins. One day, people will notice the change in you, the silence in your voice, the calmness in your eyes, the absence of fear in your energy. They will say you became colder. Do not explain yourself. Because they did not witness the betrayals that built you, the loneliness that shaped you, the pain that disciplined you. Only you know what it cost to become this man. And maybe that is the final truth of power. Not everyone is meant to understand your transformation. Some are only meant to witness it. Niccolò Machiavelli once studied kings, wars, betrayal, fear, and ambition, but beneath all his ruthless wisdom was one timeless understanding. The world belongs to the man who can control himself while others remain slaves to emotion. So walk quietly, observe carefully, trust slowly, and never apologize for becoming strong in a weak world. If this video awakened something inside you, do not ignore it, because most men will spend their entire lives trapped in weakness, desperate for approval from people who secretly do not respect them. But you see the game now. So the question is no longer whether the world is cruel. The question is, Will you finally become strong enough to survive it? If you're ready to leave weakness behind, subscribe now. Join the few men choosing discipline over emotions, silence over attention, power over approval. And comment below, I stopped being the victim. Because the moment a man masters himself, the world can no longer control him.